In late July of 2016, Father Jacques Hamel, an 86-year-old Catholic priest, was doing what he did every Sunday, conducting Mass for his parish in Normandy, France. Obviously the site of D-Day, where one of the most impactful operations in history in terms of protecting freedom and liberty took place. And there in Normandy, France, in this church, two young men, and I use that term loosely, burst into the Mass brandishing fake guns, fake explosives, but real knives. And the fake guns and the fake bombs apparently allowed them to get control of the people in the church, including Father Hamel. They forced him to his knees in front of his parishioners, and they slit his throat. And in fact, they slit his throat with such force that the reports came back and said that they beheaded him. And one of the survivors, who was a nun, said that the attackers, who claimed loyalty to the Islamic State, smiled and appeared to be happy as they slit the priest's throat. And then these two savages attempted to use some of the nuns from the church as human shields to try and escape. And when they did try and escape, fortunately, there were some French police snipers that shot and killed them. But obviously the damage was already done. One priest slaughtered. One of the nuns was wounded. And obviously peace and serenity destroyed. And that is pure evil. And that's the same evil that slaughtered 89 innocent people at the Bataclan Theater in Paris. The same evil that murdered 12 cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo. The same evil that led an Islamic extremist to murder 49 people at a nightclub in Florida. The same evil that brought down the Twin Towers and hit the Pentagon and has caused death and mayhem and destruction all over the world. And unlike Sheriff Ed Tom Bell in the book No Country for Old Men, we can't just walk away from this evil, because this evil is everywhere. And I regret to tell you that it's growing, and it's going to continue to grow unless we, the civilized people of the world, do something to stop it. And of course, with Leif and I background, both of us spent a lot of time in the SEAL teams, deployed multiple times overseas to confront this evil enemy. And of course, we get a lot of questions about our take on this. And to open up the questions for tonight, first question is here. Is the darkness taking hold? Or do you and Leif see the way out of another war? What can we do to prevent lone wolf attacks from happening in Europe and America? Leif, thanks for coming on. I know this is obviously something both of us think a lot about, and I know a lot of people are wanting to hear what we think about it. So, is the darkness taking hold, my brother?
There's no doubt that there is some serious darkness in the world, and I think that darkness, we've seen it grow. We've seen it grow. We've seen the number of jihadi terrorist attacks across the world grow substantially over the years. And statistically, that's just a fact. And I think it's something that I think people need to understand, across America, across the world. People need to understand just how evil this enemy is. We talk about darkness. We talk about evil. And, I think that No Country for Old Men summary, that intro really captures it in a way. And certainly we've seen that with drug cartels, some of the horrific things that were going on in northern Mexico or even across the border, in the United States. But this Islamic enemy in particular is, in my opinion, as evil an enemy as the U.S. military has ever faced in our long history. And I'm very well aware of the horrific evils of Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and I think this threat is every bit or even more evil than that. It is something that we're seeing, as you just described, from that one attack. That's one example of hundreds that you could use over the last year or two alone.
Yeah, and a good point on that is we hear about the attacks that take place in the Western world, right? That's what we hear about. If you start diving into the butchery and the slaughter and the torture and the rape that happens in their world, in the Islamic world, in the Middle East, and again, you and I that have been there, we know for a fact that the majority of people do not want to live under that reign of terror.
No doubt.
They want to have normal lives. And I say this all the time. I know you say this all the time. They want to have normal lives. And they are being brought down and driven by this evil is it's like, I want a stronger word. I don't know what stronger word there is, but this is a personification of Satan. That's what this is. So, and I know that's one of the things that struck me and as we were talking that made me think of No Country for Old Men, because when he says, I know he's real. I've seen his work, and I know both of us we know he's real. And anybody that's deployed overseas sees and seen what these people can do knows that this is real. Now, the other part of this question, Leif, was what can we do to prevent these lone wolf attacks? So what's your thoughts on lone wolf attacks?
Well, I think first of all, the lone wolf attack is a myth. It's an absolute myth. And this idea that these people are just randomly, we also use the term, along with lone wolf, they use the term self-radicalization. You hear that all the time. He's self-radicalized. He was a normal kid, everything was great, and all of a sudden he followed a Twitter feed from ISIS and decided to go out and kill people. And in no case are we seeing that. We're seeing that to be true. And I think we're discounting that this is an ideology. It comes out of the radical Islamic jihadi movement, and there's a Sunni component of that, there's a Shiite component of that, but there are a lot of followers of this, and there are folks that, the Orlando shooter is a great example. We have someone with he was self-radicalized, and the reality was, you could go back and track the guy's father. And see that he had pro-Taliban posts on his YouTube channel, and he's anti-American, pro-jihadi. He learned this in his home, and the fact that the Orlando shooter also happened to go to the very same mosque where the only known American-born suicide bomber attended and went to the same mosque as well. A guy who traveled to Syria, joined up with ISIS, and blew himself up, an American citizen. And they both went to the same mosque in Fort Pierce, Florida. So where is this coming from? It's coming from ideology. And we have to recognize that that's a fact. So many people want to bury their head in the sand and say, Islam's a religion of peace. This has nothing to do with Islam. It has everything to do with Islam, obviously. And as you said, of course, most of the Islamic world doesn't want to live under this brutal reign of terror. And we're abandoning those people to the likes of the Islamic State and that reign of terror if we don't stand up and we don't do anything. And so we have to recognize that threat. It is an ideology that pushes that threat, and it is not lone wolf. They're connected by that ideology across the world, and that inspires people to join up. And I think, that ties us back to the first question about, is the darkness spreading? There's always darkness in the world. There's always been evil in the world. What keeps that darkness at bay? You can go back to the Pax Romana and talk about peace in the ancient world and how it was imposed through strong military might. And it's no different today. We have enjoyed the relative peace of post-World War II because we had the strongest, most dominant military in the world. And so we keep that darkness at bay. That wouldn't have been the case if the United States and our allies had not won World War II. The darkness would have taken over the world, or much of the world. So only through military power, peace through strength, can we ensure that there's light in the world, that the darkness does not take over, that we keep that in check. And I think people need to understand that this is an enemy that can be defeated. That this darkness is spreading only because we are allowing it to spread. Only because it is metastasized, only because we have not gone and rooted it out. And so many Americans, I know they asked you just like they asked me, years ago when we saw ISIS taking over parts of Syria, then coming back into Iraq and establishing a foothold there, taking over huge cities like Mosul and Fallujah, and then Ramadi before they were pushed out. People ask, well, why do we really care about that? Why does it matter? And I think now, as we're starting to see the kind of horrific attacks that are inspired by their so-called caliphate, that real estate absolutely matters. It matters to us, and it inspires. They can inspire attacks here among us. And we always try to connect it back. People always say, well, we don't know if it was related to ISIS, and if Abu Bakr Baghdadi, the Islamic head of the Islamic State, had given them direction. That doesn't matter. None of that matters. The fact is that they're able to inspire attacks where people here amongst us in America and Western Europe and across the world go out and kill innocent people and declare their allegiance. And so we have to go there and we have to destroy them. And it is worth the effort for us. And we have a military that is eager and is ready to do that. And they are itching to make it happen because they understand the nature of this evil. Just like me and you, they've faced it, they've seen it. And, as we talk to our buddies who spent time there or there now, they're frustrated and they want to close with and destroy this enemy. And yet there's a lot of political strings holding them back from doing so. And I think that's something that it simply requires leaders who understand the nature of this threat and understand that there is a military solution to this. And we have to lead that fight. America has to lead that fight. And I think we can absolutely do that. And we can have tremendous impact in the world and make sure that people don't want to join the losing team because the Islamic State is getting hammered and people are dying in large numbers, and they don't want to go over there and be a part of that. They don't want to join up with the losing side. We got to make sure that that's clear to everybody in the world that if they want to be on the side of the radical Islamic jihadis, they're going to die a bloody and nasty death.
One of the things that you mentioned real quick, and we were kind of going off, was the fact that these people are normal people. And one of the things that you and I heard. So for those of you who don't know, Leif and I fought with the 1st Brigade, 1st Armored Division in the Battle of Ramadi in the summer of 2006, where the city of Ramadi was taken back from insurgents. And when we did that, it was a very tough fight, very fierce fight, and we were able to get that city turned around and turned back over to the citizens of Ramadi. And it turned into a flourishing city. It was very peaceful for 7 years. And when ISIS then took it over, took it back, and again, this is what Leif and I were told by people that we knew that were on the ground over there. ISIS came in and murdered. They had a list of about 500 families, and they went in and murdered every person in the family. This was a list of families of whom someone in the family had worked with the coalition forces, worked with the Iraqi government, been against this form of radical Islam. So ISIS came in and murdered 500 families, which to me, it should tell everybody out there that this is an enemy that we must address, we must face, and we must destroy.
I think what people don't understand either is that those same people who were on that list that ISIS brought in, they were screaming and begging for our help. They wanted American troops on the ground to help them. They don't want to live under that brutal reign of terror. They want us there. They want us to be able to push that enemy back and give them the chance to live their lives in relative freedom and peace and security.
Yeah, there's a great video on Vice News that shows prior to ISIS coming back in Ramadi. It's very difficult for me to watch. It'd be difficult for you to watch too, because it's showing exactly what you're saying. They're going around, they're interviewing people, and the guy that's doing the interviews he's some kind of I think he's an Iraqi American because he speaks Arabic and he's conversing with people and they're showing subtitles, but everybody he's talking to, he's saying, well, what are you going to do? It looks like ISIS is coming. And they said, we want the Americans back. We want them to come here. We want them to help us. Then they got the governor of Ramadi, and they show him on the phone, and he's talking to his whoever his superiors, and he's saying, we need the Americans out here. They're getting too close. The ISIS is getting too close. We need American support. We need them. And that's the thing that so many people miss in America, is the fact that the normal people in these countries, they do not want to live under this kind of regime, and it's hard for them to defend themselves against it. And so that's where America, the benevolent nation that we are, can provide this sort of peace and stability there. And it's going to be hard. And I say this all the time, right? If you're going to go to war, people are going to die. Americans are going to die. Innocent civilians are going to die. But look at what the alternative is. The alternative is you have this disgusting, despicable ideology getting a foothold in the world, and it is absolutely disgusting, and it should not be stood for.
And I think people need to understand too, when we're talking about destroying the Islamic Caliphate, as they call themselves, and how that real estate alone, them owning that real estate, inspires those attacks. It doesn't take in giant ground invasions with hundreds of thousands of troops in order to defeat this enemy. It takes a few thousand American troops to go and generate momentum to beat them back. Partner with folks on the ground like Anbari sheikhs that we worked with back in the day, and U.S. forces worked with for the Anbar Awakening, and they're asking for our help. We need to partner with folks like the president of Egypt and the king of Jordan, who have talked about how this is a civil war within Islam, and they don't want to subscribe to that or live under that kind of brutal reign. They want to lead the fight against it. We got to help them. We got to support them. We need to team up with folks like that. It is we must do it. And if we don't do it, you're going to see the darkness continue to spread until we actually do something about it. So many people want to say, well, let's let others over there lead the fight. That's kind of like Winston Churchill saying, you know what, the Nazis are in Czechoslovakia and France. That's their problem.
Mm-hmm. Where are they coming next?
Exactly.
All right. That's the Islamic State for you, folks.